Hello interns, I'm looking in the Resources for Middle Level Interns folder, then the Lesson Planning folder, and I want to draw your attention to the Lesson Data Comparison template. This template is for you to file, make a copy of, and then modify for your own needs. I've set it up for 25 students with 2 objectives that are being compared through a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. You would type in the actual words of objective 1 here, type in the words of 2 here, and then copy paste those over here so that the objectives themselves appear with the data. And this can just help your supervisor or your mentor, whoever reviews this, to see what it was that you were working to assess. So these numbers indicate the student number, and then in these blanks you would enter in the actual assessment score for each objective. So the idea here is that you have rated each student or assessed each student based in each objective, and you end up with a number. So this student scored a 1 on objective 1 after I reviewed the results of the pre-assessment. Let's imagine that there were 10 questions on the pre-assessment. 5 of those questions matched objective 1's skill, knowledge, or understanding, and 5 of those matched objective 2. So when I reviewed this student, the student rated a 1. So what does that 1 mean? If you scroll down, 1 pretty much means that I saw little understanding in that student's answers based upon objective 1. So how much does the student know or understand, or how much is that student able to do the skill that matches objective 1? Based on the results, I say it's a 1. So maybe there were 5 questions and the student only got 1 of them correct. That's a 1. A student that scores a 4, then maybe the results show that they mostly understand. So most of the answers, the majority, were correct or accurate. So on that pre-assessment, that student scores a 4. So this is a generic data scale, but working 0 to 5 is a pretty clean way to do it. The key is that you have to score all parts of the pre-assessment and the post-assessment using the same scale. If you change the scale, then the data no longer becomes comparable. Because if a student can score up to 10 on this side, but only 5 on this side, then your pre-assessment scores are going to be higher than your post-assessment because there are more possible points to be scored in the scale. So use the same scale as you assess each objective, and this is more of a holistic assessment. Let's say there are only 3 questions on the pre-assessment for objective 1, and there are 4 questions on the pre-assessment for objective 2. Would the scale still work? Sure. I just have to know which questions on the pre-assessment and the post-assessment are the 3 questions that match the objective 1, and which 4 questions match objective 2. So as I'm reviewing each student's work, I would look at the 3 questions that match objective 1, and then based upon how many are correct or how much understanding I see, I would still use the same 0 to 5 scale. I wouldn't change the scale to 0 to 3 and 0 to 4, because if I change the scale up to 3 here, up to 4 there, I immediately skew the results since there are more possible points. So I think that you're probably understanding you've got to use the same scale every time. So once you figure out your scale and you have your results, then you just go in and you start entering the numbers for each student based upon their student number. And you can see that as you do this, an average is automatically calculated on the right for you. Students can score zeros and it will still calculate the average. When you're finished, you end up with a combined. So this way you're looking at 1.6 means of all students in that class combined, together they all scored about a 1.6. So that shows you your whole class understanding or skill in that objective. For objective 2, so far, the numbers are higher. So these students clearly understand objective 2 more, and you can see the number is closer to 5. This is the average combined for each student. So student 2, overall understanding, objective 1 and 2 combined, is about a 2.5, while student 3 overall is about a 4.5. So the student seems to understand or know more at the pre-assessment level than this student. when I'm finished entering all my data, or whether I use these or not, these can remain just like they are. If I only had 6 students, then this is my number for the class combined. So if I took everyone in the class, combined all their data, and did an average, on average that class is at a 2.4. Then once the pre-assessment's done, I teach the lesson, and I would do a very, very similar assessment for the post-assessment. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same, because I'll still be using the same generic scale. Just based on what I have you do you fully, mostly, somewhat, lack, or have little understanding? It's important that you're assessing the same objectives. If you switch your assessment and it's really not assessing the same objectives in the same sorts of ways, then the data will skew. So this is set up to have the same effect on this side as you enter in the numbers. Maybe these numbers are a little bit higher, hopefully, since we've just taught the lesson. The averages for each student get calculated, and then a combined average gets calculated. And then this is already set up at the bottom, so that for Objective 1 and Objective 2, the pre and post numbers are being compared, and this bar graph will change as you enter the data. You should know that this number comes from cell B30. So B30 is right here, because that's the overall Objective 1 number, which is what I want to see as this bar graph. That means that if I were to add rows here, then I would have to change this to match the new spot where the combined number ends up. You can see that for Objective 2 it's C30, which is this cell. For post it's F30, which is this cell. And this one is G30. I would have to change these numbers if I moved those around, otherwise it would not work. So I built this template to try to help you get started, and if you try it and you have trouble, you can let me know, and good luck.